everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And in this episode, we'll be discussing the astrology for the week of February 5th, 2018, and what we have titled, Your Lucky Break. So the purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about today are Venus sextile Uranus, which is all about unexpected opportunity. We'll also talk about the last quarter moon in Scorpio, which we're calling intense reflections. And lastly, we'll talk about the Sun square Jupiter, which is about soul-stretching challenges. So some of these aspects will influence you more than others based on what's literally happening in your life right now and your personal astrological makeup. So notice what resonates with you most and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, because you know you best. So yeah, Shawna, let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some other minor aspects for all you astro geeks out there. Well, we start off the week with our lunar lady in her waning cycle, and she's straddling the end of balancing Libra before she moves into the intensity of Scorpio later in the day. She then makes her way to her last quarter position on Wednesday, which we'll talk about in much more detail later in the episode. She then moves into adventurous Sagittarius on Thursday, where she's going to remain until moving into goal-oriented Capricorn on Saturday. Also of note, we have Venus, who's going to be moving into Pisces on Saturday, February 10th at 3:20 p.m. Pacific time, which is 11:20 p.m. Universal time, and Sunday, February 11th at 9:20 a.m. Aussie Eastern Standard Time. So Shawna, share with us who we're featuring for this week's quotes.
Yes, so this episode features quotes and inspiration from the comedian, writer, and producer, Tina Fey. Her work is hilarious, but also real. And I found that her wit, optimism, and spontaneous humor make her a great symbol for this week.
Absolutely. I love her. It's hard not to love her. She's so funny.
She is. And she talks about very real issues. And so, yeah, she's amazing. I love her.
Yeah. Just a little side note. If anybody's seen that Netflix show with Jerry Seinfeld, where he does, it's like comedians in cars getting coffee or something like that. I think that's the title of the actual thing. They're really good, actually. And she appears on one of the episodes. And you get a lot of insight into her personal character, I think, in that episode versus the stage character, many stage characters. So I highly recommend watching that. It's about 17 minutes, but funny and real, like you're saying, Shawna.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I'm excited to check that out. I've been watching lots of old skits and things that she's been doing all week leading up to this recording.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that being said, we're excited to jump into these transits. One last note before we do, want to give a shout out to all of our patrons and our listeners. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And special shout out to one of our newest patrons, Kristen. Thank you for joining us, Kristen.
Yes. Thank you, Kristen. We greatly appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you can become a patron to show your appreciation of this podcast by going to feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com. And you can just find out more about us and connect with us on Facebook or Instagram under Feminine Principle Podcast.
All right. So let's get into our lucky break this week.
Yes.
And our first aspect we're going to talk about is Venus, who is in the tail end of Aquarius, who will be in a sextile aspect to Uranus and Aries, and what we're titling Unexpected Opportunity. So some exacts on that. She's going to be exact on Tuesday, February 6th at 5:36 p.m. Pacific time, which is Wednesday the 7th at 1:36 a.m. Universal Time, and then 11:36 a.m. Aussie Eastern Standard Time. And that's going to happen at 25 degrees Aquarius and Aries. So Shawna, kick us in with your first quote.
So this again is by Tina Fey. Say yes, and you'll figure it out later. And I like this. I thought this was so perfect for Venus Uranus because like this transit, so Venus is about attraction, sometimes repulsion. Venus is about our capacity to allure or attract or even just be like socially enticing for the things that it is that we want, the things that it is that we enjoy in our lives, the things that we appreciate. And Uranus is about unexpected opportunities, doing things differently. And I found that that when this aspect happens, whether it's in the natal chart or just transiting, there can be this opportunity that comes and it kind of feels like, whoa, where the fuck did this come from? And can I do this? Am I ready for this? And so I think the answer is yes. And then we'll figure it out. I think that's great advice for this transit this week.
Yes, because when Uranus shows up, a lot of times you don't have time to act. You know, like it's something that comes out of the blue, and it's something it's usually momentarily there. It's like a fast, strike of lightning where all of a sudden it's like boom. Yeah, I just imagine lightning striking and then poof, this thing appearing, and you're like, whoa, what is going on here? And so that can definitely happen at this time. And to recap on a sextile here, once again, that's about, us being, having an opportunity to act on something. But that doesn't mean that it's going to just happen. Once again, it's like you have to stimulate it into action in a way. So you have to take that opportunity. And opportunities can be so many different things, Shawna, right? Opportunities... It just depends on how we look at them. They can be blatant and it's like, yes, that's a good opportunity. That's going to, get me closer to where I want to be or make me more money or, things that work, pair me up with the right people, et cetera. But sometimes opportunities can be veiled in a way that we don't really understand until after moving through them, depending on So I guess what I'm saying is look for all levels of opportunity because it might not be, blatantly apparent at first, like what the opportunity might be in the long run. It might be something you have to act upon now. And then you realize having taken that action that you're like, oh, wait, well, I'm glad I did this because now this opens up or now I feel this way about something or like, so So that, vary that idea of opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I find that the nature of the sextile is it's not that someone's just going to like hand you an opportunity on a silver platter. You have to kind of like the terms that keep coming to mind as we're talking about this is look for the omens and follow the breadcrumbs. Whatever it is, these opportunities, it's most likely the feeling that I get about this is it's more that we may get a feeling about something or there may be like a synchronicity that happens and that we need to act on that in order to get the next step. An example that comes to mind is I had someone that I knew there was a friend and a client where she had this aspect happening in her natal chart where Uranus was going to sextile her natal Venus. And all of these crazy things started happening. Like she got a reading from someone and she had been thinking about moving overseas and the reading totally confirmed that. And then she saw like this massive grasshopper somewhere in her house. And it was like, she looked it up and it's like about taking leaps and moving and just like little stuff like that started happening. And things started to line up so that it became just very organic for her to go through the steps of like moving and packing up her things. And then there was an apartment available at the exact spot that she wanted. But the thing was, she had to like take action on the things. And a lot of it was moving on faith as well. And so a lot of that faith for her in particular, I think partially because she's a more intuitive person, a lot of that was following these little omens and these little signs and little feelings that she got through symbols like seeing animals and synchronicity and that kind of thing was happening. And so I think that is what I think it's wise to look for those kinds of things at this time.
That sounds like my life every day. I'm like, everything I'm seeing, I'm like, what does this mean? This means this. And this means that. And it's true because that likens to the breadcrumbs you were saying, Shawna. It's like these little things that are seemingly insignificant show up in our lives all the time. And it's what we pay attention to that it really gains significance in our own realm of existence. So if you see something and it's significant to you in any way, shape, or form, it's worth investigating, because the fact that you noticed it in the first place is, your attention is being called there for a reason. So yeah, definitely all those little things add up for sure. And it's interesting, Shawna, because we're talking about Venus in Aquarius, and Venus in Aquarius, likes to be out there with, friends and groups and, just connecting with different people and having a wide array of social encounters and a bit of a sense of freedom in a sense. So I'm thinking that we might either we might encounter opportunity through unexpected connections where people come out of the woodwork, or maybe we're at some type of social event, or we're in a gathering, a group of friends, and then a new person arrives and you're like, who are you? Well, that's just one thing. But, I feel like openings can really come at this time through kind of that group mentality, or gathering with like-minded people that support whatever it is that you're personally interested in doing in the world. So I would keep your eye open, or get out there a little bit this week. It's early in the week, like we're talking about Tuesday, so we're probably going to feel this from Sunday to about Wednesday, I think. But the fact that this is paired with the last quarter moon is interesting, Shawna, I think. So I don't know if we should I don't know if we should talk about that now or wait. But what do you think about encountering lively social encounters? Yes.
Yeah. Well,
and then paired with that last quarter.
Yeah. So I think a few different things here. I agree as far as the social connection and being out there, because Venus is in Aquarius, and we also have the Sun and the South Node and Mercury in Aquarius. And Aquarius is typically associated with community and groups, and how is it that we're bringing what it is that we have out into the collective kind of energy. And collective can be like going to a meetup. It can be connecting with like-minded people, or anything in that way. It's very socially enhancing kind of energy. And I was thinking, so a few different things. It's interesting because last week we had Venus square Jupiter, which was kind of like maybe something, some also themes around social interaction and expanding our social circle and that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, it is curious that this aspect is happening this week, the same week with the last quarter moon in Scorpio, because that's more of like a brooding kind of energy. And so I don't know, maybe we have like some really intense, deep conversations with people. Maybe we get interested or exposed to something that is along the lines of metaphysical or esoteric kind of things. Like that might be something very interesting to explore as well. If there's something like going to a group meetup or something that is along the lines of meditation or astrology or tarot or anything like that. That like those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking of when I see this pairing of the Venus and Uranus with this last quarter moon in Scorpio.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. And chances are even the lively social encounters, or like just kind of getting out there and socializing and meeting new people, might happen a little early on when we have the moon in Libra on Sunday, because then, as the moon gets to the late degrees of Libra, it's going to oppose Uranus. So I'm wondering if in that moment we'll kind of get a little flavor of what this Venus sextile Uranus means, by the moon giving us a little trigger of some sort. And I think that'd probably be about Monday. So we shall see what comes down the pipeline. And if you meet people, that's the thing, is like the whole energy of Aquarius, I mean, not in total, but a lot of times Aquarius can be a catalyst for something. So you might meet someone or have an opportunity in some way that is not like necessarily a long-standing one, but something about that encounter is what is going to then kind of set in catalytic motion different things coming along the way. Because the whole idea of Uranus is like the surprise, like I'm in, I'm out, so there's a chance like someone pops in and you're like, hey, and then they pop out and something, you've gained something from that in some way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, now the last thing I would say about a potentiality and kind of paired with that last quarter moon, like you were saying, Shawna, how it could have a brooding type of vibe to it midweek. I was thinking about how Venus in Aquarius, just in general, has more of a detached relating style, like it needs space just as much as Uranus needs space. So I'm wondering if in some ways, if we're out there and we need space in certain relationships, say, not for better or for worse, not like anything's like breaking down or anything, but sometimes we just need freedom within our relations. We need a little space, giving space in a good way type of thing. So I'm just wondering if maybe that could come up now too, where, either you're like, can I just get a minute? Or, that's what I'm acting on. I'm like, can I just go hang out with my friends for a second? Boo, can I? Or the other way around where you find that your loved one is like, I need a second. No harm, no foul. I just need some space. So that, and I think I say this all, Shawna, because of our tarot cards here. So let's segue into that. And I want to hear what you have to say about those types of things. So for Venus sextile Uranus, I drew the 5 of Pentacles as the focus and the 7 of Cups as the grounding. And at first I was like, okay, well, right, what's this? And I started thinking about it a little bit here. And there's a couple ways this could go down. First, if we're talking about opportunity, and taking opportunity, because we're talking about sextile, so it's not just handed to you, you have to act on it. And sometimes that 5 of Pentacles can show up when we're not really trusting our ability to manifest things in life or being able to take action to kind of change what our reality looks like. We stay in this space that just kind of facilitates non-growth through sometimes an emotional situation, which could definitely be a last quarter moon situation. So I'm wondering if that 7 of Cups energy, which is usually all these cups that are filled with all these opportunities, right? Some of them real and potential and some of them just no. And so I'm wondering if we're going to be trusting in our ability to be able to take action, to embrace an opportunity, or to be able to even choose the right opportunity and feel good about it. So that's just one thing, but I know that was a lot, Shawna. So what do you think about these cards or any of those potentials I just said?
Yeah. So, okay, a few different things. Number one, the contrast between these cards is very interesting because the 5 of Pentacles is basically about like where there is some kind of poverty mentality, whether that is spiritual or financial or just feeling kind of like, man, like I feel like I don't have a lot, I don't have enough is what that card makes me think of. And then in contrast, the 7 of Cups is, like all of the opportunities. There's all these cups with all this stuff in it. And so I think that is really interesting. The piece about Venus in Aquarius being about getting freedom and independence, I think that's crucial as well. Venus in Aquarius reminds me of Esther Perel's work, where she talks about this interplay, this balance of love and intimacy, and then also needing to balance that out with independence and having one's own personal space, and that we really need that in order to keep the attraction and the allure alive. We need to have the intimacy, but we also need we need to have our partner or people in general kind of at arm's length so that they're close, but that they can see us, that they don't like there's no enmeshment, because when the enmeshment goes away, or when the enmeshment happens, that's when the physical attraction can dissolve. And so, so I'm wondering, like, it's interesting. I'm wondering, like, where is there a place that we feel a certain sense of loss, whether that is socially or financially, or even just feeling like there's something missing. And I'm wondering if we can get that missing piece by going back to ourselves and looking inside, or getting, like being with ourselves in a certain way. And maybe that means going out and doing something socially that's a little bit different. But yeah, that's what I'm getting from these cards.
I like that. And I like the idea of being with yourself for a second, because the whole idea of the Five of Pentacles can come up when we're a little out of spiritual alignment. So having that time to yourself might be what is needed to kind of transition into more integrity in some way, just in the moment and how you're relating to people. And if you find yourself on the other end of things, say someone is like, I just need a little space, and like you may take it the wrong way, like, because that's the thing with the Five of Pentacles too, is it can show feelings of rejection or feeling alone in some way. But the whole idea of the Seven of Cups is a lot of times there's illusion tied to that card, or high expectations. So I would say, be aware of what you're choosing to see, I guess, in a situation, because what you see is essentially, what your perception is your reality, as they say. So let's stay realistic about our situations and our opportunity, and not pessimistic, because that's not going to do us any good here. So those were some interesting cards, but I think that having those things on, in the brain can help move through if those situations arrive. All right, so some questions to take away. So for Venus sextile Uranus here, I would ask myself, with the high possibility of lively social encounters early on in the week, can I stay open to the new and unusual that may walk into my life? If there's an offer on the table, will I seriously consider taking action on this unexpected opportunity? I would ask, how rigid is my current relational routine? Is it the same old in my day-to-day partnerships? Is it time to spice things up a bit? Or would taking a moment of space be what's needed to help gain a little personal freedom in order to come back together refreshed and revitalized? And lastly, I would ask, if feeling a little rejected or alone at the moment, can I take the time to fully assess why I feel this way? Is there any sense of illusion or high expectations that I'm holding for another? Can I release that vision of lack and remember that what I be is what comes?
Nice.
All right, so let's move on to a big thing this week, and that is the last quarter moon in Scorpio, and what we are titling Intense Reflections. And so some exacts on that. That last quarter moon is going to happen on Wednesday, February 7th at 7:54 a.m. Pacific time, which is 3:54 p.m. Universal Time, and then Thursday, the 8th, at 1:54 a.m. Aussie Eastern Standard Time. And that last quarter is going to happen at 18 degrees Scorpio. So, Shawna, kick us in with your next quote.
So this is by Tina Fey. Some people say, never let them see you cry. I say, if you're so mad you could just cry, then cry. It terrifies everyone.
And, true.
Yeah, it really is true. Oh my gosh. People don't like it when you cry. It freaks them out. I mean, not everyone, but many people.
Yes.
And so I thought this was really appropriate for the last quarter moon in Scorpio for a few different reasons. Number one, the last quarter moon, it is this point towards the end of the lunar cycle where we're more reflective. It is typically known as a crisis of consciousness because it's a square between the sun and the moon. That's the nature of the last quarter point. So a square is when we encounter some type of either conflict or realization, like there's something that comes up that needs to be processed. And sometimes it can feel kind of intense, sometimes not so much. It really depends on what's going on in your life. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it is towards the end of the cycle means that it's more of an internal kind of conflict versus an external one. So crisis of consciousness, and that we're working something out internally. On top of that, this is in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is reflective. It can be brooding. It has this internalized nature. Scorpio is associated with things like psychology and esoteric things, and even like astrology and magic and like even witchy kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it's got like this this dark in a healthy way, dark, like shadowy, mystical kind of presence to it. So it's like, yeah, we may feel like intense and we may feel like we want to cry, maybe not. But the whole thing is like, it's okay. Like this is the time for feeling all of that stuff and for really reflecting on things.
Mm-hmm. That is definitely Scorpio's. It's one of Scorpio's purpose. It can go to the dark side. It can definitely go to the dark side occasionally. But that's also where the strength lies on Scorpios, because it's able to traverse those depths in a way. That's why it gets that psychological bent, because a lot of other signs or energies don't necessarily want to go to that place, or it's not comfortable to go to that place. But for Scorpio, it's kind of so comfortable to go to that place that for better or worse, when you find yourself there, it can be challenging, because sometimes, you have anxiety about kind of worst case scenario types of things, or revisiting old, transgressions in your head over and over and over. But at the same time, Scorpio is also known as a healing energy. So being able to tap into these things and work through them, and as long as you don't get caught in the loop, you can really heal yourself. These are the moments when it's not pleasant at first, but you can really come up on the other side. You got to go to the dark basically to get to the light in a sense. So I think that a lot of that can happen right now. And for a couple of reasons, we have the last quarter moon is going to be sextile to Pluto. So here we have an opportunity to work through some of that matter that we're talking about, like that kind of drudged up, underbelly of our own psyches can come up right now, and issues around control or resentment, or just your overall honesty with yourself of how you're feeling emotionally. Like I feel this can be a very healing time, this last quarter moon, which might not be pleasant at first, because we are in eclipse season. So we got to keep in mind that each phase of the moon that we go through as we're in eclipse season is kind of as important as the eclipse. I mean, it has different levels for different reasons, but it's moving the eclipse season along. And so once again, any of these fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, like all these lunations, you're probably going to be feeling it the most, I think. So Shawna, what do you think about Pluto being involved in the fact that we're in eclipse season still, and how there be some, oomph to this?
Yeah, definitely oomph. So I really like that we have the Scorpio last quarter moon in like sandwiched between the two eclipses, because Scorpio is also associated with alchemy, and alchemy is the process of taking something apart and then basically like concentrating it. Some people, some would describe it as like taking something apart into different pieces and then purifying those pieces and then bringing them back together. But it's really about like untangling something and then concentrating the different parts and then bringing it back together. And when it comes back together, it's transformed, it's stronger, it's more beautiful. And there's like a resilience that's there as well. So Scorpio is all about this process. So we may be doing that in our lives, especially because it's eclipse season, because eclipses make us, or they don't make us do anything, but they reflect a time when we're like looking at things a little bit differently, and we're maybe getting a different perspective on things. And so I agree that this week, this last quarter moon, it may not be necessarily the most like pleasant, where you're like, I'm just feeling jazzed and sunshine and gumdrops. But it's probably going to feel important and maybe intense. And I think that, yeah, Pluto sextile to this moon can definitely add an additional layer of depth to what is already something that is very deep, and lots of reflection, and a call to really be honest with ourselves too on what it is that's been happening, especially reflecting on the full moon lunar eclipse that happened last week and what that means for us.
I like that a lot, because, the whole idea of last quarter in that internal, process that we go through is that this is the time to make a last inner push, basically, towards what it is we're developing, whether it's in this lunar cycle or because we're in eclipse season, we're talking about a bigger period of time. And so I'm noticing themes between the idea of surface versus depth, because, Aquarius lives on, it's like a dragonfly, like lives on the surface, skirts the water a little bit, but it's more about kind of the rational thought or detaching from any, severe emotions in a way. It doesn't want to deal with those. It's like, no, you're, versus Scorpio, which is, and that's the whole idea of a square, is these energies are just not the same in any way. They're both fixed. They're both really, stay, determined upon how they view things, but one is more on a surface level and one is more very much diving the depths. So having that Scorpio moon type of energy, I feel like if we can tap into that surface and that detachment and like stepping back from what it is, that we're emoting right now, I feel like we can detach enough to maybe break through certain emotional patterns in our internal process, because we're going to find tension between the intellect and the emotional self at this time. And the mind's going to see it one way, the feelings are going to see it another way. And if we can kind of like incorporate the best of the two, and I really think that we can like detach enough to move past some of our emotional hiccups, in a sense, that we have. So.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that it does speak to the balance between how can we allow for going deeply into what it is that we actually feel, which is what Scorpio wants. And then at the same time, having a certain amount of perspective and not being overwhelmed or overrun or consumed by what it is that we feel at the same time, which is a shadow tendency of Scorpio. And Aquarius helps us with that. Aquarius helps us to create some distance when something can be so overwhelming emotionally that it becomes damaging. And so I think, it's like, how do we walking that line throughout this week to find a balance there?
Yes, absolutely. And to play into that whole idea of like, working through these things and kind of, like Scorpio can tell old stories in a sense, over and over. And at some point you have to detach from those stories in order to move on. And so I want to take that concept and pepper in our Sabian symbol here, because I find it interesting. And I think it really kind of flows well with that. So the Sabian symbol for this last quarter moon is, we're going to round up. So it'll be 19 degrees Scorpio. And it's a parrot listening and then talking.
Ew.
I know. A parrot listening and then talking. So the key word is conventionality and the theme is regurgitation. And I immediately, having Scorpio energy, I was like, this is interesting, because the whole idea of Scorpio and, the idea of obsessing over something and, compulsively thinking something, and keeping the same stories or emotional, habits within ourselves. We're essentially like this parrot who is, just listening to our own, story over and over and just speaking it, like, this is how I feel, so I'm just going to repeat this and repeat this and repeat this. So we kind of stay in this repetition of a pattern that limits us in some ways and leaves us on this primitive level, because this low side of Scorpio can be a very primitive energy versus the high side that's healing and, sees everything on this, grander, more mystical type of scale. So you got to kind of find where you are in that polarity, in a sense. And it's also about, if we hear things from other people, being aware not to, think things through instead of hearing things how you want to hear them and then jumping to certain conclusions or forming your own opinions, or even speaking on those things too quickly before you've had a time to really mull them over in your head. So Shawna, what do you think about this parrot that's listening and then talking? The idea of, repetition, in a sense.
Yeah. So I think that's so fascinating. So what that brings to mind is this loop, this cycle that can happen sometimes with Scorpio energy, and just in general. Like we can, like you're saying, Mel, we can get caught in a story that we tell ourselves based on all of like situations that we've experienced over time. It's like, I can never trust people because people always, flake out on me or whatever. Or I always have bosses that are dicks, because and it's like, this is like, these stories are a lot of times very unconscious, and we come to expect a certain situation. And then by the nature of that, we draw that situation to us. If we always have, people that are bosses or someone in an authority position that treats us poorly, we come to expect that, and then we attract those types of personalities. And so there can be this loop that happens. And what that also makes me think of is the nature of getting stuck in that loop is that there's never really like a sense of completion or of mastery, or like there's no like peak experience to that as long as we're in the loop. And so sometimes I think that it's so it's interesting how energy works and how life works, but I find that sometimes it's about detaching from that and getting space from it, and sometimes it's about going into it and having like a peak. This might sound strange, but it makes me think of like an orgasm, where sometimes like you get up to the top, and like if you don't crest over it, like you just stay there. And so like I think that's just something to think about as well, as like these situations that we have, whether it's about relationships or money or just having a sense of comfort in ourselves. What is the loop that we're stuck in? And do we need to get some space from that, or do we need to like really dig into it a little bit deeper? And I think that depends on a person's temperament. If they're more scorpionic, maybe detachment is better. If it's if you're listening and you're like, man, like that scares the shit out of me, maybe it's more about leaning into what's really happening underneath the surface there and exploring some of the deeper themes. So that's what I think about that.
No, I love that. That's great. That's great. And I love the likening to an orgasm, because hey, we're talking about Scorpio here. So why not? Why not? And I think that's absolutely right, that we take it by a case scenario depending on what your temperament is. If you have that more Aquarius kind of detached, like Aries type of energy, then yeah, this moon might be saying like, come on, let's dive these depths. Let's get in there. And then if you're, you're already someone that has that pattern and you got that Scorpio or those intense water energies where you're constantly working through this type of thing, then yes, get to the surface, rise,
Yeah. Then maybe just go for a walk.
Because the thing is like we have to get our stories straight, because our story is something that we tell ourselves, but in turn we end up telling other people that story as well. And so look at the story that it is that you're regurgitating, basically, and see if you're setting your own bad example. You know, you might be thinking that you're, you know, emotionally feeling that you're one way and then showing people that you are this way too. And you put that out in the world when really, you know, you're much more than that, and you don't have to be stuck in these old patterns. And we all have our patterns. That's the thing, is it's not, you know, we're all guilty. So I thought that was an interesting symbol to share. And especially since we do, you know, let's just keep in mind that this moon is pretty much close to Jupiter when it's happening too. So as we know with Jupiter, it ramps up whatever it touches. It kind of magnifies and it takes it to a grander level. So having a last quarter moon there might kind of light it up just a little bit more, but hopefully to let us move through things. And that's really going to pair in with our next segment that we talk about with the sun squaring Jupiter. Because Shawna, I really feel this is definitely another breakthrough type of week. I know we're in eclipse season, but all these aspects are really leading us to push past and embrace new things, and to challenge ourselves in the areas of growth.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. It definitely feels like a new opening in many ways.
Yes. So let's talk about these tarot cards because they're interesting as well. And I think they kind of, you know, run into that theme a little bit. And so we have the Two of Pentacles as the focus, and then balance, or what is also known as temperance, as the grounding. And, you know, life is busy right now. It just is. I don't know if it is for everybody, but it certainly is for me. So I think we're just actively just juggling things. We have several situations in our life. We have many options. Keep in mind, we're just talking about Venus sextile Uranus. Maybe that Seven of Cups energy brought all this, like these different things for us to entertain. You know, we have all these options and opportunities on our plate. But at the same time, we have to find the balance in ourselves to be able to juggle all these things. You know, find that balance between, you know, our mundane reality and what we have to take care of on this earthly plane, but also pair that with our spiritual selves, and if our spiritual selves are really speaking to what we're doing down here. And so to liken to what you were saying earlier, Shawna, about Scorpio being that alchemical process, like this is the card that really represents that, you know, moving through that, you know, juggling those two realms in order to essentially find healing, because that's, you know, that's the nature of Scorpio, and that's the nature of the temperance card, is balancing those two energies to find healing within. So I kind of love the Two of Pentacles there, because we are moving through change rapidly, and especially last quarter moon in Scorpio. So we just need to stay flexible, which is not always easy for fixed signs to do. You know, this is the challenge here, is to stay flexible and be open to change. Be open to it. You know, handle your old situations in new ways. You know, stop the regurgitating parrot, basically, and then in turn, we're going to bring some healing and balance into our lives by just adapting to what's around us, I think. So what do you think about this juggling kind of energy, and what you're saying earlier? It's basically tapping into what you're saying earlier, Shawna, in the temperance card. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's so interesting. So first, the Two of Pentacles. Yeah. Like, what different options or even what commitments are we balancing? You know, I think it really is about both of these cards together, about flexibility and holding all of the things at the same time. And I think that it really speaks to, yes, like this process of alchemy, and knowing that now is not necessarily the time to be like, I can't deal with this and just throw it away. It's like, how can we very delicately, very wisely hold all of our experience, and like the inner experience and the outer experience, all of the things that we have to balance and juggle, but maybe even just all of the different emotions that we're having. And the Temperance card makes me wonder if we're feeling like different emotions that maybe conflict, and how can we hold that allow for ourselves to feel, maybe like happiness for someone, but then like kind of be annoyed at the same time, or, like bittersweet kind of feelings even, or like we were talking about earlier, wanting to connect and have intimacy, but then also maintain our individuality and have some free time as well. And it feels really important to hold that, and that maybe there's some sense of peace and satisfaction that comes when we make space for everything that it is that we're feeling.
I like that a lot, Shawna. And it kind of plays into the, if I think of Witeki's step system with 18 degrees Scorpio, it's like the heart decides on what action to take in the area of boundaries and change. And that kind of speaks to what you were just saying about, how we are relating to ourselves and relating to other people, and the idea of, that kind of Aquarian freedom. And within that freedom, we have to kind of actively set limits within things. So that's interesting. Yes. So I think it's going to be a very healing last quarter moon. I just throwing it in last minute. Trying Chiron. It's trying Chiron.
Oh, yeah.
That wound that we're like reminded of certain painful things that come back up. So this just speaks to it even more being able to a healing energy, I think.
Yeah. Well, and Chiron is about like the mythology with Chiron was about like healing tonics and that kind of thing. So I think that blends really well with the temperance and the alchemy. It's like, like what tonic are you making for yourself?
Oh, I love that, Shawna. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yes. All right. So some questions to take away for our last quarter moon Scorpio. I would ask myself, what is my inner landscape feeling like right now? Is there anything I'm emotionally obsessing over? In what way can I nurture myself within and help transform my energy to respond to a new level of being? I would ask, what stories are on repeat within my own psyche? Do these intense reflections help or hinder me? As internal tensions are on the rise, how can I look at my story in a different way and break the emotional pattern? And then lastly, I would ask, how flexible am I with change? With many options being currently juggled, can I take the time to ground my energy and come back to earth in order to balance my life and adapt to what surrounds me?
Love it.
All right, so let's move on to our last segment here. Last but certainly not least, we have the sun, who is going to be squaring Jupiter in Scorpio in what we're titling Soul Stretching Challenges. And some exacts on that. That's going to happen on Saturday, February 10th at 3:21 p.m. Pacific time, which is 11:21 p.m. Universal time, and then Sunday the 11th at 9:21 a.m. Aussie Eastern Standard Time. And that square is going to happen at 22 degrees Aquarius and Scorpio. So Shawna, kick us in with your last quote.
So this is from Tina Fey. Whatever the problem, be a part of the solution. Don't just sit around raising questions and pointing out obstacles. And so I thought this was really perfect for the Sun square Jupiter, because Jupiter is associated with expansion and new ideas, learning about new things, and just like exploring. And Jupiter is also about inclusion. And so it's like, okay, what are all of the possibilities? What are all of the options? I want everything. It's like buffet style. And the Sun square Jupiter is like, okay, where Sun is about our consciousness, our awareness. It's that light that it is that we have to give. The problematic side of Jupiter can sometimes be where we're either entertaining too many possibilities, or it's just like sometimes kind of can be like dogmatic, or like, oh, like that won't work because of blah, 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 and this kind of thing. And so I feel like this aspect is really about entertaining new possibilities and a need to be open, even if it seems like things won't work, or there's some challenges around things. So that's what I'm feeling around all of this, especially because it's the sun in Aquarius as well. And that is also a call to be open and to not don't judge the book by its cover kind of energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, Aquarius is also about moving into future energy as well, and that's why it can detach itself to what was, and look towards what is going to be. And Jupiter moves us into the future as well. And so they're coming together once again, this kind of surface versus depth kind of area. And Jupiter and Scorpio, like you were saying, Shawna, how Jupiter, expands everything buffet style. I like that. Very true. But being in Scorpio, that buffet has a lot of tense things that are on the tense motions that we have to work through in order to choose what it is that we're nurturing ourselves with. So it's not very Jupiter, we like to think of it as an easier energy, but I think Jupiter in Scorpio has been definitely playing into some certain challenges in our life, certain challenges in the world, and having us move through these dark areas that are getting us to better places, and we are expanding through that. But Jupiter and Scorpio, through that expansion, can be a little rough because things, we are noticing themes of change and themes of transforming certain areas of our life, and death. Maybe literally, but most likely figuratively around certain things and moving into new areas of our life and new areas of expression. And I think that really chimes in with the whole sun in Aquarius thing, because yes, we're moving into the future. We're feeling out the potential of what our direction looks like. And so this is the type of aspect that is calling us, it's challenging us in some way to grow, and grow, emotionally in a lot of ways, because this, even though this is happening, exactly on Saturday or Sunday, depending on where you are, I think that we're really going to feel it brewing when we have that last quarter moon in Scorpio, because the moon's going to touch Jupiter and kind of amplify that a little bit more. So this week is really all about growth and change and those opportunities that are on the table to into that 7 of Cups, back in the Venus sextile Uranus. Like you were saying, Shawna, there's maybe all these options on the plate, and we feel challenged to pick one and feel that we can confidently, work through it and take that option. And so, I think this is going to be fruitful in the end, but challenging during the process.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the term that keeps coming to mind is transmutation. What is it that we're taking what we've got, and maybe some of it works and maybe some of it needs to be we need to make a butterfly out of something. Something needs to change, something needs to shift. And because we have all of this really intense energy and the Uranus Venus involved, we may not know exactly what needs to happen, but it feels important that we explore what it is that needs to change.
I like that, because Jupiter loves to explore, and we have Mars and Sagittarius right now. So our Mars energy, which is interesting, Shawna, because I forgot to kind of mention this when we were talking about the last quarter moon in Scorpio. Because Scorpio's traditional ruler is Mars. So Mars is kind of representing this area for our last quarter moon and for Jupiter. And Mars is kind of inching its way to a square with Neptune right now. And it's not exact, but we're going to start to feel these things. And those types of feelings can kind of come in as doubt. And so I think we might be working with a lot of with emotional doubt around some of the things, our direction. We're gonna work through it, and that's why we had that. Once again, that 7 of Cups earlier on in the episode, where we have all these options, and we might, some might look doubtful, or some might be good, but we're just doubting the possibility of that. So I think that really kind of comes into play, even though it's a loose square at this time, but it's approaching, and so those types of energies can come in. So. What do you think about that Mars action?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, that aspect will be exact next week. And so, it's already subtly starting to influence. And I think it could definitely be reflected as like subtle doubt or questioning, or, what happens if this doesn't work out, and that kind of thing. And I think that is probably more present with people that are already having a transit of Neptune.
Yes.
But for all of us, it's like, and I think that I would use that energy if we are feeling that way. So if someone were feeling like a sense of hesitancy or doubt, or like, ooh, like what if this is the wrong decision? My advice would be to step back and to do what it is that, like what change can be taken, or what actions can be taken, or what exploration can be done that, that has like the least amount of ramifications. And, like the thing is, there's a lot that we can do without putting ourselves in a precarious predicament. There's a lot that we can do, and that we can look into, because I talked to a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people recently that were asking me about like going back to school and that kind of thing, because I've shared that's something that I've done recently. And so I've had a lot of people reach out and say, how did you decide, or what did you do, or what program are you doing? And a lot of times I just end up telling them, like, research what's in your area, the field that you want to get into. And I think just stuff like that, like you're not going to lose anything except for time, and time is ticking anyways. So I wouldn't let fear stop you when it's just a matter of like looking into something that can often be very beneficial.
And that can really play into that last quarter moon in Scorpio, because I can bring up some fears around being able to take that step, because we are talking about Mars in Sagittarius, which is about taking the step, like taking the risk, getting it out there, finding that information, staying positive and optimistic about, where you're taking action, essentially. It's interesting because Jupiter can take things too far too. So we have to be careful of that right now. Just like, our willpower is basically in this tense aspect, where we might just take it just too far. And I find it interesting too with this being at 22 degrees, if I once again liken to Witteki's step system, which I'm finding more and more relevant in so many ways. I'm like, it's interesting. But this is a breakthrough step. It's the last of the series of them. So it's a higher up breakthrough, basically. It's more of a spiritual breakthrough than it is like a physical one or anything. And the idea is that I feel myself, and I feel myself some more, and then it's not the Divinals or anything, but remember that song, I touch myself. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, it's basically you're really getting this feeling in order to decipher and break down and break through where it is you belong in the future and where you don't. Because I really think that Aquarius has a lot of flavor of just finding where you fit in life. And so, if we're talking about a grander scheme of growth, which when Jupiter and the sun come in contact, especially in a hard aspect, we're all growing in some way. That's taking us on a new leap, to liken to your friend that had the grasshopper in her house. I feel like we're all going to have our own proverbial grasshopper kind of leaping into our lives right now, that are showing us where we need to grow and break through, and getting us into where we belong, taking our energy forward, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's an excellent point of to watch out for the problematic side of Jupiter, which is biting off more than we can chew. I think that's a good, and I don't know, I don't get the sense that we will necessarily do that, but I think that's good to watch out for, like, where is too much. And I think it also ties into the tarot cards that for this aspect, and for the that we pulled previously as well.
Yes, it definitely does. So let's pepper that in here real quick because it really plays into all of the other all the other cards and reinforces them. So for the Sun square Jupiter, I drew transformation, or AKA the Death card, at the focus, and then the Temperance card, or balance, as the grounding. So that kind of the balance, that temperance, that tonic that you were likening to earlier, Shawna, is back and grounding this whole thing. So this whole week is about finding balance, and the idea of, like what we were just saying about Jupiter having. Jupiter can take things in excess. And so if we're looking to find the balance and temper ourselves in some way, we have to stay on that equal side of Jupiter, especially with Mars in Sagittarius. And the Temperance card actually rules Sagittarius. And that's why it's about the balance, because, excesses kind of get us out of whack in life. So I would think with these two cards, it's just really, once again, playing into the idea that life is changing. We are in a cycle of change. We are shutting old things down. We're in eclipse season still, and we're starting new things up. And we're just being challenged in the area of our life that allows us to move through closure and to start new chapters, and to keep our balance and harmony, and the internal union that's within inside, peaceful and working for us, in a sense. So, Shawna, what do you think about transformation meeting balance?
Yeah, well, so I know it sounds weird, but I always love the Death card because it is about transformation. It is about regeneration. It always makes me think of like the butterfly, and how there really is, like, even though it's called death, like it just marks a change and it marks a new beginning, and that process of something ending and something new beginning. And then Temperance is like, yeah, like it's cool, don't worry about it, just find this sense of equanimity between things, and yeah, like again, that theme of alchemy and magic keeps coming back. So I really love these cards, and I think definitely an encouragement to be open to change and to have a certain sense of like, where can we find optimism as well in order to usher us through this change.
I like that, because Jupiter, another strong suit of Jupiter is being able to be optimistic. In Scorpio, maybe a little less so, but it still has that within its nature. And Jupiter in Scorpio is bringing the cycle of change. It essentially is in so many ways. And it's associated with death in a lot of ways, just not only being in Scorpio, but Jupiter itself as a planet has mythology in death, but deaths in peaceful ways. And that's the thing, is that death can be peaceful if we allow it to be. So to liken to the Scorpio energy, how well you control yourself is essentially how smooth this process is going to go as we move into new expressions of being and changing our lives in many ways. So I guess my question is, how peaceful are you? How peaceful are you going to let this transition be? And that really speaks into the balance, and balancing, finding a divine balance within yourself. To let that go, embrace the new.
Definitely.
So some questions to take away for the Sun squaring Jupiter. I would ask myself, where does my realm of experience need to stretch? In what areas do I want to take life further than it's been so far? Can I release any stubborn or aloof tendencies and push myself into new territory? I would ask, what in my life needs to change in order to gain greater harmony? Are there any problems that I'm fixated on that keep me from growing? Can I recognize my own role in the matter and push myself forward to be part of the solution? And then lastly, I would ask, how confident and optimistic am I about the direction I am pointing my life in? Is it a little out of my comfort zone? If so, can I use this challenge and courage to put to rest any doubt and step forward into my own unique purpose?
Nice.
Because we are talking about Aquarius here, so we're all finding our unique selves while the sun is spotlighting here. So, oh my God, Shawna, what have we learned?
Everything.
Well, we've learned that this week could be your lucky break. Might not seem lucky at first, but really it's going to be what gets you to where you need to be. We just got to move through that energy. So first we have that Venus sextile to Uranus, where we could have an unexpected opportunity, and we have to keep our mind open to what an opportunity may be, because it shows up in many shapes and forms. We learned that we're having a last quarter moon in Scorpio, and we are going to be intensely reflecting on our inner process. And so we don't want to regurgitate like that parrot, and we're not going to stay stuck here. We're going to move through this change and hopefully remain a little detached. And then lastly, we learned that the sun is going to square Jupiter, and we're going to have some soul stretching to do. And it's going to be time to challenge ourselves within change and the ability to find balance. So Shawna, now I know you have an excellent action item for everyone to take away, so please share.
I do. So action item for this week is to write down what would your lucky break look like if it happened this week. And you can be as extravagant as you want in typical Jupiterian fashion, or, you can keep it more reasonable and tiny. But what would it look like if you got a lucky break this week? Write that down and then put it on like if you have a little Post-it note or just even a little piece of paper, write it down and then put it somewhere special in a place that it's like a little hidden place.
You find it later and you're like, oh, yeah. So. Oh, yes, that sounds wonderful. I have a few lucky breaks I'd like to write down myself.
Yeah, exactly. So that is your action item for the week. And of course, if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you like listening to us every single week, you can become a patron of the podcast to show your appreciation. You can do that by going to feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com. And you can also connect with us on Facebook and Instagram under Feminine Principle Podcast.
Yes. And if you do sign up to be a patron, you do get those show notes that we send out every week that summarize a lot of what we're saying. And it's kind of like a newsletter that kind of gets to the point if you just don't have a moment to listen, but want to get the gist of the week. So that's very helpful.
Yep.
And also of note, just in case, we are still in eclipse season. So if you missed our full moon / total lunar eclipse live from Facebook last week, you can watch the replay on Facebook and YouTube. So that was a lot of fun to do, Shawna. So, if you haven't seen it and want to learn more about, the energy of the season, go check that out.
Yeah, it's definitely good to reflect back, even if you're watching in retrospect, because it can give context to what was happening last week during the eclipse. And it's, definitely fun.
Yes. All right. So where you can find us, well, you can find me at energeticprinciples.com, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Energetic Principles. And I have daily little IG stories that I share with the current energy that's going on. It's nice, sweet, simple. It takes 15 seconds of your time and just gives you a little something for the day. I don't really have anything going on right now other than I'm offering my normal readings. And one that's been popular lately is my Tarot Meets Astro, where we do just that, Tarot Meets Astro. And you can do that in person here in San Diego, or you can do that via Zoom online. So Shawna, what do you got going on? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So I love that you're doing those readings, Mel. I know we were talking about that earlier, but yeah, it's like a nice little combo that just pairs super well. And thanks to the podcast for having me figure that out as I went along. Yeah, you never know how things will turn out.
See, Venus sextile Uranus.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, good example. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under Neo Feminine Astrology. And things that I have that are available now, I have a guided meditation that's up for the previous full moon, so you can still listen to that if you want to tune into those moon vibes and you want to do a little guided meditation. And then I also have my meditation membership that I just released, where you can get a guided meditation every single week for the astrology of the week. And I'm really excited about it.
Yes. How could you not be? If you haven't had one of Shawna's meditations yet, whether in person or via the web, get in there, because
Get in there.
Get in there. It could be exactly what you need for this week, to be honest, especially when we're moving through last quarter energy like that. So bravo, Shawna, bravo. All right. So any last words for our listeners this week?
Yeah, sending lots of love, and thank you as always for listening. And, we always love hearing from you too. So feel free to comment or post, whether that's individually or on the Facebook and Instagram for the Feminine Principle. And then, if you haven't already, make sure that you leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Facebook, because that helps us to get higher in the search engine thing so that we can reach more people. And if you've already done that, thank you so much. We appreciate that very much.
Yes, we do, because every little bit helps and it counts. So it helps get us out there. So we definitely appreciate that. And if you're ready to subscribe to future episodes, they come out every week at midnight Pacific times on Sundays. So if you subscribe, I think it just does it all for you. It's like magic. We just show up on Sunday. So yes. Well, all right, everybody. Wishing everyone a fabulous week with this very intense but groundbreaking energy, I think. So we thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.